Good afternoon to most of you here. My name is Elizabeth Leslie, and I'm the Communications Manager for the League of Women Voters of California. It is 12:59, so we are about 1 minute away from our MyLO training series about formatting options. As we wait for others to arrive and for the clock to actually hit 1, just a few housekeeping reminders. First of all, do remember that we are all in mute mode. So if you have questions, please use the chat box for most of you in the right-hand corner. It's sort of a drop-down menu box, and put your questions in there. And also at the end, I'll open it up and I'll be looking for people using the hand raised icon if you would like to ask your question. Maybe it's too hard to type out. And again, we will be recording this webinar. So if you need to go back and look at it and press pause and watch or share it with others so that they can rewatch, we will be doing that as well. So with that, I'd like to say that it is now 1 o'clock, and welcome very much for coming here to the MyLO training series. And today's focus is going to be on formatting options. Again, this is being recorded, so please use the chat box for questions, but I am going to introduce two people and then hand off the presentation. I'd like to acknowledge that Amaris LeBron is on the line with us today. Many of you know her. She is our labeled here as our MyLO customer service queen, and she will be on the line with us today, as well as Rain Michaels, our MyLO guru, and really the brains and hard work behind this project. And I'm going to hand it off to you, Rain, to take charge of the presentation from here on out.
All right, well, that sounds good. Thank you very much. Let me take the presentation here, show my screen. All right. So I'm starting logged out, as I usually do on our webinars, because I wanted to give the opportunity to just remind everyone how logging in changes the interface and what's available as we go through this process. And the other thing that I would like to remind everybody about is that we do have a documentation section. So if you come to my.lwv.org, just the landing page itself, or if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of your local league site, there's this link right down at the very, very bottom on the right-hand side that says My League Online. And if you click on that, it takes you to the same place, which is this, let me scroll up quickly, this long list of other leagues. And when you're there, on the left is a menu item that says documentation, and that will take you to some documentation, which I'll show you in a moment. And also, I do want to just make sure everyone's aware that you can take a look at all of the other leagues and see how they're using formatting, see if they're doing something that you like, and then feel free to reach out to them, because some of the best ideas that we've seen have come out of leagues interacting with each other and answering each other's questions or coming up with ideas together. But in this documentation section, there are a lot of different items available to you. We tried to keep them all short and sweet. So hopefully those are available. You can also feel free to ask for documentation, or as a couple of our members have done, to provide some documentation if you find an interesting solution, and then we'll edit it a little bit and put it up and make it available to everyone. So without further ado, I will go ahead and log in to MyLO. Oops. There we go. Okay, so once I'm logged in, this particular user, or actually I'm logged in as myself, but let me go back. So I'm going to log in as a league webmaster. I'm just masquerading now to pretend to be someone who has the same level of access that you might have. And then once I'm logged in as that type of a user, now I can go ahead and work with my league site. I can edit it as I see fit. I can work with the formatting in my content. And really what this specific webinar is about is how to get formatting within your pages so that your pages can look the way that you want them to. We've had a lot of people with questions about just tweaking it to be just right, and making sure that you're comfortable with how it looks. And we've also had a lot of questions about getting rid of faulty formatting that might come in from a copy and paste. So let's go ahead and start with just a generic page. I'm going to go ahead and add a page, and we can play with that formatting. So in this league, I'm just going to go ahead and add a page. Now, one thing I do want to point out is when we were looking at that demo local league, it was using the purple and gold theme as in design, and now you're looking at a page that looks like it's using the red and blue design. And this is actually the case. The system, the MyLO system as a whole, is still on the red and blue because that is the one that the majority of the leagues are still on. So you will, if you are using the purple and gold look on your site, you will have to kind of make the subtle mental adjustment, realizing that you're looking at the red and blue, but all of the tools are the same. So there's slight differences in the colors or the fonts, but otherwise it's the same concept. So that being said, let's go ahead and do a demo formatting page. That's what I'll call it. Let me zoom in a little bit. I want to zoom in without breaking the layout to one of the mobile formats so that we're looking at this in a single desktop format. And what we're really interested in today is the formatting of the content. So I'm going to bypass a lot of these other options unless there's questions at the end. And I'm going to focus entirely on this body field. And let's go ahead and throw a bunch of text in here and just do some basic formatting. So I've just grabbed a bunch of text and pasted it in. Your best practice, if you have the time and energy to do this, is going to be to start out with clean text without any formatting in it. Notice there aren't even any paragraphs, there's no headers, there's nothing, no bold or anything like that in here. I've just started out with clean, non-formatted text. And pasting that into your body field and then formatting in your body field is going to give you the most clean markup that you can possibly have. So you're least likely to encounter errors or to have some unexpected behavior occur, because any type of web experience has markup on the back end, which is code that's telling the text how to display. Or not, it's not technically code, but that's the best way to think about it. It's basically code that tells the text or the browser, how should this information look? How should it be rendered on the page? So if you're taking something from, say, Microsoft Word or Apple's Pages application or Google Docs or any other number of applications, if you're copying and pasting something that has paragraphs and headers, styles, and bold, and so forth in it already, there is what's called invisible markup hiding in your text. And when you look at it here, when you paste it in here, it might look exactly like what you just saw me paste, or it might have whatever formatting you've already had in it. But hiding behind this will be markup that you can't see when you're looking at your text with what we call the visual editor or WYSIWYG active. So you won't see it, but it might be there. And then when you save, it might cause some weird formatting issues. So this is going to be the cleanest way to avoid those kinds of problems. And we're going to talk about ways to troubleshoot those issues in a little bit. But first, I just kind of want to show you the basics as if you were starting with a nice clean slate. So once you have your nice clean slate, now you can create your paragraphs by just placing your cursor where you want to break things up. It's always a good idea for usability and accessibility to think about putting what's called semantic markup into your content. And semantic markup would be things like headers or lists, or making sure that any quotes that you have are labeled as block quotes in the formatting, because that information is then relayed to search engines, and it's also relayed to screen readers as information that helps search engines and screen readers know how to parse or read that content. So it'll make your pages more accessible, but it'll also simply make your pages easier to read, because whenever you're formatting your content, one really important thing to remember, this is very annoying, especially for league people who really put a lot of energy and care into the material that you create. But it's really important to understand that people don't typically read on the web. They skim. They skim for the content that they want. So you are going to have the best results by not fighting that and instead actually helping the user skim for interesting content. And the way to do that is the same way that you might help a screen reader user access your page, which is to give nice headers as sort of landmarks to guide the user or guide the visitor through the content. So register to vote. Let me just put some headers in here to show you what I mean. If you just moved, and then let's say for the first time, and then I'm going to put a little bit more content in here. I want to keep my screen reader for the first time, and then let's put register to vote, and then after you've voted, and I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I'll grab some more content. So what I mean by putting in headers that make it really easy to read is, and skim, is one thing you'll notice is that none of my paragraphs are very long. And I've broken them all up with these one-liners. This one-liner, I'm going to highlight it. And in this paragraph item right here, I'm going to drop down and I'm going to choose heading level 2. So thinking in terms of an outline, I have the title, demo formatting page, which it would be my heading level 1. And then I have my heading level 2. And then my other heading level 2 in terms of outline format would be after you voted. And now I have 2 heading level 3 items. This is the other thing that people will often use incorrect formatting because they're looking for a specific look. It's really important from a semantic perspective, which means most specifically for your search engines and your screen readers, that your outlines follow a logical structure. So it's not a good idea to use heading level 3 just because you like the blue color. If it's a heading level 3, it should always have a heading level 2 above it, and it should always be meant as a heading. Otherwise, you'll want to make use of some other way to augment your text and not use semantic markup such as block quote or heading level or list simply because you like the way that those items look. So now I've done some basic formatting in here, and I've simply made use of headings level 2 and 3. The other thing that I'm going to do, because I think that this looks really nice, is I'm going to take this first paragraph and I'm going to highlight it. And then over here, next to my block styles, my heading levels, there's this styles drop down as well. And I'm going to take that first one, which says special. Oh, this is good. This is a troubleshooting item that we're going to do now. So I'm glad that happened. Okay, so I assigned the special block style to this text, and it gave it a serif font, so it's a little fancier font. It made it bigger. It just kind of draws it out, and it'll make the page look nicer inherently. So from there, now I have to troubleshoot this issue. My heading level 2 just got destroyed. It still says heading level 2, but it also got the special formatting, and that's competing. So I definitely want to fix that. The first thing I'm going to do is just backspace. Backspace is your fixing things kind of go-to. And in fact, I'm going to backspace all the way to that period, and I might even get rid of that R. And now I know that I need to put the period back in, and I know I need to put the R back in because I removed those. And the reason I removed them is because I wanted to clean out whatever was happening between those 2 characters that's causing my styling to come together. Once I've done that, now I'm going to press return again to give it a paragraph. And then I'm going to take this special styling right here, and I'm going to remove it by simply choosing styles instead of special in the dropdown. Or I also have this little button right here that looks like an eraser. If I mouse over it, it says remove formatting. So I could have done one or the other. And now I want to get my header back, so I'll highlight it again and say header level 2. Now it looks like what I want it to look like. So from here, we're going to go ahead and save this. We'll save it in draft mode so that we can start to see what this looks like. Okay, so we still have some troubleshooting. Notice even though I started with a clean page, I still have troubleshooting. And the reason for that, I don't know if you noticed, but I have this little tool that's giving me some copy so that I don't have to generate copy myself. And that copy and paste action itself is creating some inherent problems. Pretty much any copy and paste of text might create some inherent problems that I'll then have to fix. But that's okay because I can fix these. So the first thing that I see, I like this special text. It gives me a nice bold lead into my content. It looks special. It just feels nice because I have this saying, okay, this is why this page is worth being here. Then I have my header level 2. I have this horrible space. I have nice header level 3s, very easy to skim, but these horrible spaces as well. And then I have my header level 2 again. So I can skim this and have a pretty good sense of the structure of the page. But I want to fix those spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and edit my draft now. And now I can see those spaces. So the first time I created it, I couldn't really see those spaces. Now, there's something else that you can see here is the second time I'm working on this, I do get to see it in the purple and gold look. So because now it knows what league this content belongs to, and it knows that that league is using the purple and gold theme. So once you've created something for the first time, when you edit it, it'll start to look more like what you expect because it knows where it belongs. But the very first time you create a piece of content, it doesn't actually know where it belongs until you save it. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm actually just going to remove this spacing now that I can see it. If I couldn't see it, then I would use that exact same technique that I just showed you. Let's say there was something weird going on between these two paragraphs. Then I would delete the L, go all the way back, delete the period, put the period back in, press return, and put the L back in. 99.9% of the time that MyLO webmasters contact us through Google Groups or the MyLO support email, or just reach out to me individually and say that you're having trouble with formatting. And 99.9% of the time, I literally fix it with the technique that I just showed you. So I will show you a couple of other techniques, but that's the majority of how I fix formatting, is just deleting one character before, one character after the problem, and then recreating those characters. Okay, so I've cleaned that up a little bit. We'll save it in a moment, but I also want to make sure that you're comfortable with the notice style and the block quote style. So I'm creating a separate element in here, and I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to give that the style of notice, which is also from my styles. And then it wraps it in that yellow color so that that will be a little bit more obvious, a little more apparent. Maybe I also want to make it bold. I would never change it to a heading because I definitely don't want to lie about what the semantic element is. And then maybe in here, let's put a block quote right here. Block quote is only to be used for quotes, but anytime you have long quotes, it's a good idea to use block quote because that's really good semantic markup. So there's an icon right here next to your styles that looks like a little quote, and you can click on that, and then it'll style it to look like a quote. Another good tip for making your content very easy to skim is lists. People love lists. So you'll just take each item, highlight it, and then you have either unordered list, which is bullets, or ordered list, which is numbers. So you can quickly make a list. So let's go ahead and save this and see what it looks like. All right, so now we have spacing that makes more sense. We have a block quote. We have something that's been called out as needing attention. And the formatting is starting to look more like what we would expect. From here, a couple of other things that you'll want to be aware of. If we go to the home page for Demo Local, you'll see that there are items here on the front page. And you'll notice that for many of you, these are probably displaying slightly differently from how your front page looks, because your front page might have a lot of weird styling inside of each of these items. So you might have some big text, or maybe some of you are getting some of the yellow in there, or it just kind of looks strange. The reason for this is because if you don't put a little summary in your body, then the site will take the first 300 characters of your content, no matter what those characters are, and will use those for those teasers in lists. So if I edit this right now, on its own, the site is going to take these first characters. It might even take all the way through register to vote. And there's a lot of formatting in there, so it would take even that formatting. So a really good trick for your summaries for your content is this edit summary box right here. So if you click on that, it opens up a box that can only use plain text. And then you simply put whatever plain text you want in there, and that becomes the little snippet that not only goes on your homepage or anywhere else that a piece of content is listed, but is also used for social media. So that can be pretty good as well. So I want to make sure that, that you're aware of that as a tool also. Okay, now I did promise you some information on more advanced troubleshooting. So let's take a look at some of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, if I can. Let's say I want to put this into my content. So I'm going to copy that, and it already has formatting, and then I'm going to paste it. Now, first of all, there's a lot of weird things going on right here. The returns are a little bit strange, and it just doesn't look quite like I would expect, even in this form. But I'm going to go ahead and save this. And let's see what it looks like. So actually, it doesn't look as bad as I was kind of hoping it would for this first presentation, but we can still see that there's some really weird stuff going on in terms of the layout, and it just doesn't look good to us. So I'll go ahead and edit this again. And this is definitely, first of all, somewhere that I would make sure that we have a heading level 2. So something like join us for League Day. Of course, I would really want an event for this. Using the right content type for your content is important. So if you're putting an event into the system, make sure that you use event, that you say add event, not add page. But for now, that's beside the point. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, style it as a heading 2. Now the actual date and time, that probably looks fine, but I think I need to, get rid of some of these weird spaces that are occurring in here. So the easiest way to do it, obviously, is what I already showed you. Just get rid of one letter before and one letter after, and then make it the way that I want it. But that's not always going to be the easiest way to do it. Or maybe sometimes you won't want to do it that way. Another option that you have is to disable rich text. If you disable rich text, that's going to actually show you the code itself. Now let me zoom in here. And what you'll see is that from that copy and paste, there's a bunch of BRs. Those BRs are breaking spaces. That's what they indicate. They're a line break. So every time there's a BR, it's going to create a line break. And in some of those cases, such as between of and all, I don't really want that. So I can go in here and remove this. Now this is obviously a simple case. You've definitely most of you have had more complex cases than this, but this kind of shows you if you're comfortable with HTML code, this is one way that you can quickly get rid of large blobs of copy or formatting that you really don't want in your content. So I'll go ahead and enable rich text again. And one of the other kind of things that I do a lot is just kind of fast paced, but sometimes that formatting won't go away entirely. So that's really important to keep in mind. Now I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure to save time for questions. So the next thing that I really want to show you are a couple of little tricks for linking up emails and phone numbers. Email addresses are automatically linked and URLs are automatically linked if you have entered them, if they are written on the page as an email address or a URL. Now, the good news about that as well is that URLs offsite will open in a new window, and meaning URLs that are going somewhere other than an lwv.org domain. And the other thing to keep in mind is that email addresses already have spam protection laid over them in this site. And there's actually a documentation article about how that works and what it looks like. So screen readers and spam bots won't actually be able to pull the email address directly because it's obscured. So that's something for you to be kind of feel a little bit relieved on. But if you want to link a phone number or text that isn't an email address as an email, then what we can do, so the phone number here, I'll just copy that. And then you can use either your insert link, your simple one, or your more advanced one that searches your content. The simple one is probably the better one to use in this case. And then you would say tell for a phone number, and then get rid of all the characters so that it's just the phone number, no spaces or anything else like that. And that tell, T-E-L, tells the browser to launch somebody's Skype or phone or whatever they have linked up. If they're using a mobile device, then it would initiate a phone call. If you want to link something that isn't an email address as one, then you can do mail to, colon, and then the email address. And then that will link the email address as an email as well. And the code will obscure the email address so that spam bots won't be able to pull it. So I did want to make sure that you had that information as well. That being said, I know there's only about 5 minutes left. So Elizabeth, I'd like to turn it back to you to see if there's questions or anything else you'd like me to address.
Okay, great, Rain. Well, I've been checking here in the chat box and I don't see any questions. However, that doesn't mean people don't have any. So, and I see we have 11 attendees here, which is fantastic. So I'm not sure if I want to unmute everyone at once, but I will in case people are not able to either raise their hand or put a question in the box there. I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, Rain Tyler has a question, so I'm going to unmute you now, Rain. So go ahead and ask your question, Rain.
Hi.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, I often have trouble getting rid of formatting. I haven't, the tricks that Rain just went over, I haven't used before, so that may work. But sometimes I get stuck with a button and I can't get rid of that formatting, or a list and can't get rid of it. I mean,
Okay. Yeah, thank you for asking that. So yeah, the tricks that I just gave you, those are good ones, but let's go to both of those really quickly and demonstrate getting rid of a list and or getting rid of a button. So if these are in list form, typically you should be able to get rid of a list by simply highlighting the entirety of the list. And then you'll see that that item is now a darkened color. I'm trying to, there we go. So that's a darkened color in the WYSIWYG itself. Of course, I zoomed in and that kind of played with what we're doing, but that's okay. So then you typically, not always, but typically you should be able to simply select that item again and then it will typically remove the formatting. If you have trouble with that, another thing that you can do is, again, notice how I'm now selecting before and after the list, not just the list itself. And then there is this erase formatting button or remove formatting that you can try. It's not necessarily going to get rid of the list, but it'll at least get rid of anything. Sometimes there's styles or anything else something else weird in there that might be impacting you. And then once you've removed, maybe pressed that a few times, you might have a cleaner environment. So then clicking on list again might actually help you and then get rid of what you're trying to get rid of. If all else fails, then yes, the best, let me get that list back. If all else fails, then your best bet is going to be to remove those items by backing up either one character before and one character after, or in this case, I'm able to just do it by backspacing that list. But that, in this case, hopefully that would be your last resort and you wouldn't need to go to it, hopefully clearing the formatting, and then you would be able to remove the list. So definitely give that a try. And if you still continue to have difficulty, let us know, and then we'll try to identify what's happening for you, because there might be something else going on as well. So then let's imagine that this is a button. Okay, so notice, by the way, for anyone who hasn't used the button formatting, if you highlight something and then choose button, then it makes it look like a button. And this really should only be used for something that is meant to be a link. And typically a link that invokes action, not a link to another page, because this also kind of has semantic meaning. Visually to your eye, it's kind of take action, register, pay, donate, whatever it is that you want the person to do, as opposed to more information here. But if something has button formatting, then it will behave and look like a button to a user. If you want to get rid of that formatting, then again, sort of making sure that you've selected everything, and then you can use this here and then click styles, and then that should get rid of it. But again, if that doesn't work, then that's where this remove formatting will also come in handy to try to get things cleaned up a little bit. The other thing that you can do if you're more comfortable or curious, so now I just switched over to the code view. I disabled, there's this link down here, enable and disable rich text. So I disabled rich text. And now I'm going to do a find button. So I'm literally just finding in my browser and looking for class button. And then I can go ahead and remove class button from there. And that will get rid of that button as well. That's a little bit more advanced, but that's another option that you have.
Okay, Rain, trying to be sensitive about time, we're going to move forward, and Bonnie seems to have her hand up, so I'm going to unmute you, Bonnie, to see if you can ask your question of Rain right now.
Thank you. I was wondering if there's a way to make a notice, like where you just had the sample that is the agenda that has returns or list. Is there a way to make that as a notice?
So to take the entire agenda here, this whole thing,
Yeah.
and make that a notice?
Yes.
Yes, so you can do that. That's gonna take a little bit more work, because typically when you highlight something like this, it's gonna take each line individually. So I hopefully can show you. Okay, so this is kind of what it'll look like on its own, which might be, actually that's kind of neat. But imagine that didn't look good. I was hoping it would look really bad. In fact, maybe it'll look nice and bad if we put it in the list format. So now I can go ahead and take notice here, and that doesn't look horrible either. I really wanted it to look bad for you. But let's imagine that it did look really bad. What you can do as well, this takes a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more HTML knowledge, But what you want to make sure is happening is that the style for notice is in the wrapper for the entire element, not in sub items. So the list is this up here, UL-LI. Actually, that's a different list. Let's, I'm going to do notice here to find it. Okay, here it is. Right down here. So we're going to take this, and what I mean by it being in the wrapper element, and the more you look at this, the more familiar it'll become, because you can always just kind of take a look at something that's looking the way that you want it to and see how it's done. So I'm just putting this onto each line here so that you can see this. Okay, let me zoom in here. So each of these LIs, they're all list items. You don't want the notice to be on each list item. What might happen when you choose it, depending on exactly what you selected, is that you might have it looking like this. And that would probably look pretty bad. So you just want to make sure that it's the wrapper item, which is this UL, unordered list, which has a beginning and end, that's the item that notice is on. But you can put it on anything you want. Just make sure it's on the wrapper, not the internal items. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, great. Well, let me see if I am not seeing any more. Oh, here, I'm not sure if you have another question, Rain, or if you didn't unclick your question mark, but I'm going to unmute you just in case. Rain, did you get all of your questions answered?
I think I did. I guess I didn't know I was supposed to push something, but let me just ask, sometimes when you have multiple style items like indent or center, and then, I mean, it's hard to undo multiple things, multiple style items. Does that make sense?
Yes, so that's where clear formatting is going to come in handy. That let me zoom this back out. So this little button right here to remove formatting, that's where that's going to come in handy to kind of select whatever's got all of those things on it. And again, remove formatting, it's not going to take away your semantic markup. It's only going to take away the styles, not the semantic markup. But it will at least get you a cleaner slate so that you can kind of start over. And the other thing that I would say, since you did bring this up, I have noticed that it's very common for leagues to use a lot of centering of text and to use tables just because historically there's been kind of this clarity of things lining up in a very specific way. So leagues might use tables to have things line up in a specific way, or might use centering because it's the formatting that you're familiar with. Both of those things are typically not considered good for accessibility. It's a lot better for accessibility when you start thinking about cognitive or vision or reading disabilities to think about left aligning, or if we weren't English speaking, if we were a right to left language, right aligning. But since we're a left to right language, left aligning everything is ultimately, it might take some getting used to because you're so used to centering. But instead of centering, try to keep things left aligned and try to only use tables when it's actually a data table, because that also does have semantic meaning. And then and then if you are trying to get very special formatting and you're not able to, feel free to reach out to us. First of all, especially on the Google group, because somebody may have already come up with a solution. But there may be a different approach, a more accessible approach that we can offer back to you as well.
Okay, and we have one hand raised here from Jan Carwin, so I'm going to unmute Jan. Go ahead, Jan. Jan, are you still there with a question? Okay, maybe not, or maybe she has muted herself. Let's try it one more time. Oh, she's self-muted. Okay, perhaps we have answered her question. So continuing onward, are there any, oh wait, let's see, Mary Agnes Garman has a question that I think is worth reading aloud. She asks, can you delete the extra spacing before the end quote on the special quote?
Yes, no. Sorry, that was my very California response there. No, this special style that you're looking at right here, that's coded in, and this is very common. You'll actually see this a lot on blogs, because these quotes here are kind of, they're not actually graphics, they are text, but they're more of a visual that's being rendered. What you'll actually see very commonly on most blogs, and what maybe we should do to make this feel more comfortable to people, is you'll only see the open quote and not the end quote. But that's something, Elizabeth, that we can certainly ask our community about and see what they would prefer, and then go from there. Or we can get rid of the quote marks entirely and just use the special font, and then see if leagues would prefer to go that route as well. So there's options that we can put in place, but that is in the style sheet itself. It's not something that you have control over.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's all the time we have today for questions, unless I'm going to try Jan one more time, because I do see her hand up again. So I've unmuted you, but it says you are self-muted. So I'm not sure if Jan has a question, but perhaps she might want to put it in the chat box if she's not able to unmute herself. So I'll give her a moment to, there you go, you're unmuted. Jan, did you have a question? It says she's unmuted, but perhaps her sound is not working properly. Okay.
Well, can I address Rebecca's question?
Please do.
Okay, great. So yes, the question that Rebecca's asking is about kind of having a test space to save in and feel confident that your playing isn't going to create an issue. For anyone who's not aware of this, absolutely everything that you do is by default saved in draft form. So when you save it, it'll by default be, the moderation state will by default be draft, even after you've published something. So if I save this, I don't know if you can see this through the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, but this has a pink background, which tells you that there's no live version of this content. It's never been published, and the public will not be able to access this content at all. So only you as well, you and any of your other league webmasters will be able to see this. And then at a certain point, you'll move forward and you'll decide that you want to publish it. So at that point, there is a moderation tab, or you can publish it from the page itself. There's a button there, and you'll click apply. Once you've done that, now you can, so now this page is actually published. The world can see it. You can also go ahead and click on new draft and then start to make changes that will not replace the public version. So I can go ahead and add something, another special line, for example, and then I'll save it as a draft. So it's going to save. And now it doesn't have the pink anymore because there is a public version, but this is my draft version. So it shows me this is my draft. The public will not see it until I'm ready to replace the public version. If I look at view published, this is what the public sees. And then I can also go to moderate, and I can replace the published version with the new one whenever I'm ready. So that is an option as well.
And Rain,
And
we do have a question which maybe you can answer on this page. It is a question from Jan, and she's asking about the bullet points. As you see here under register to vote, she wants to know if the bullet points can be substituted for stars, because she doesn't care for the stars.
Okay, so that's a design decision that Elizabeth, that you and Amaris and anyone else who's involved in deciding how this should look will probably want to make. We can probably add a style. I'm suspecting, and I'm not sure because I've never tried this, but I might be able to override it right here. Yeah, well, I should probably test this on my own. But I'm suspecting that we can actually do an override in the code. Jan, if you wouldn't mind putting that question into the Google group, and I will test and see if you can do an override easily on your own. Otherwise, then we'll have to bring the question of adding more options for how lists display to the MyLO team as far as a design consideration goes.
Great, thank you for answering that question, Rain. Well, we're about 15 minutes over our half-an-hour time slot, so I think it would be great to finish up, except I see another request from Jan. She said she's requested to be added to the Google group, but requested the subject to the Google group, but no response. Okay, well, perhaps I will reply to it and sort of bump it up in the group to see if there are more people that might be interested in that option, and we can add that to our potential feature request list. So with that, we want to say thank you again for joining us here for the MyLO Training Series webinar. We will be offering another one next month. If there are suggestions on topics that you would like us to cover, feel free to send it into the Google group, or you're welcome to email us at our MyLO email, which is mylo@lwvc.org, or you're always welcome to ask us individually. I know we communicate with many of you one-on-one. So again, thank you so much for being here. You will receive a link tomorrow of this recorded webinar. And again, thanks to Amaris and to our amazing Rain on our team here today.
Thank you.
And with that, we will say goodbye and have a great afternoon.